Sorrow of the Bloodbot. This is a story I wrote last week, and it should get its first edit here in just a moment. 104 ABBT9 was not the first model of his kind. He was not really a prototype either, but bigger ones would be built in the future. The first couple times he was activated were systems checks, or system... I think I got the S in the wrong place there. Let me flip that around. System checks that did not involve much of his artificial intelligence. The first day he remembered clearly was when Carrie, his technician, placed him on a wet table in the center of a very nice conference room. Lots of dark wood and built-ins with antiques on display. He would never be in a room this nice again. Most of the men in fine suits around the room were seated. Let me do this too. Seated, old, and white. But a few stood up and leered over the little bot. They were all rich, say wealthy, all wealthy as well, but the little bot had no way of knowing that or understanding it. Okay. She poured out an oily substance with red tinting into it. A little of it oozed up against and between the treads of his tracks. This did not distress him much. All those peering eyes were so very fascinating. Carrie gave an introduction that the little bot had trouble attending to, but then she activated him by a switch. Let's say a switch on a remote. He lifted his arms attached to the little vacuum and, let me fix that typo, and began sweeping the oily substance into one confined area. Then he activated the suction. It was specially designed not to create any profane sucking noises. Profane, let's say, or offensive. Sucking. Okay. Offensive sucking or gurgling noises. When he took up the bulk of the spill, he swept the surface of the wet table clean and slurped up the rest. Okay, Carrie ran a finger over the table and held it up to show it was dry. The men applauded, and the bot did a little pre-programmed dance. Carrie opened the bot's display case and transported him to a small lab. There she started cleaning out his joints and tubes. As she did so, Carrie said, "You're doing great, 10-4. Soon you will have many, many friends." All right. Say 10-4. Do I do a dash between 10-4? Yeah. I do his name with a dash. 10-4 noted and recorded the words he did not yet have a reference for in his memory. All right, that'll be good. She returned him to his display case and patted the top of his head above his sensors before closing him in. He had no words. Okay. Let's say he had just been introduced to the concept of friends, let's say friends and friendship, but if let's say, no, I messed this up. Okay, he had just been introduced to the concept of friends and friendship, but he had no references other than Carrie and how she treated him. Let's say... He had just been introduced to the concept of friends and friendship, but he had no reference other than Carrie and how she treated him. Okay. He made a note of it under the category friend. He made a note of it under the category of friend. Okay, that'd be good enough. All right, more people showed up, and 10-4 lifted his little vac to salute them. A couple of the younger friends giggled. One of them... I'll put that in quotation marks there. One of them pushed the button, and more of that oily red stuff spilled out from the edge of the floor of his display. The friends made groaning noises, and 10-4 did his little pre-programmed dance. His treads ran through the liquid and spread out the mess. There were more groans, but he had no time to dance again. He started turning in place as he swept the substance into one area. He vacuumed, swept together the remnant, and vacked again. No applause, so he just gave a lifted salute as they walked away giggling. He took another moment while no one was looking to clean his treads too, and then gave the display case floor another cleaning just to be sure. Carrie walked by the other way with another bot different from 10-4. She winked and he raised his vac arms in salute. Another friend, this one tall, with droopy eyes, pushed the button. Another spill spread out. 10-4. Okay, I have a dash in some places, but not others. I'm going to make it standard with the dash. So that may be something I need to check in a future edit as well. All right. Another spill spread out. 10-4. I need to put a dash there. 10-4 waited until the bleeding tapered off, and he started cleaning his assigned space. No applause followed before the lone friend strolled away. 10-4 centered himself, and that was it for a while. Scene break. Carrie started to pass him in his display case, as she did most mornings each week. 10-4 had calculated that it was usually 5 days on and 2 days. It was usually a 5 days on and 2 days off pattern. Although sometimes there were extra days off and some stretches with no days off. She waved as she always did on days here. Let's say on her days here. 10-4 lifted his vac in salute as he always did. Carrie paused, turned back, and opened his case. It must have been time for another adjustment. She took him to her little lab and set him on the table. Instead of taking him apart, she took out a solid substance and started feeding her own vac. Each time she lifted the solids to her vac opening, 10-4 lifted his vac in salute. Carrie patted his head and said, "You don't have to do that every time, 10-4. He spent a lot of his time trying to process this. Which times, under what conditions, more data was needed. While he worked on this ambiguous problem, she spoke of her life and the calculations outside this facility that baffled her. She was changing. 10-4 still recognized her, but some of her features were shifting. More wrinkles in the skin, more gray in the hair. He centered her face in his sensors and took another picture to use for recognition. This would not be the last updated image he would take over the next few years. She finished vacuuming up her solids, but left some crumb debris. 10-4 was programmed for thick liquids, but not solids. He thought he should try anyway. 10-4, he thought he should try anyway. It seemed like the sort of thing a friend would do. and Carrie was categorized under friend in his memory. All right, I'm going to italicize friend here under friend in his memory. 10-4 rolled forward and prepared to sweep the crumbs together. She gathered them up first in a paper and disposed of them herself. As she took him back to his display case, she said, "That wasn't your job." Another instruction with confusing data. This was not the last time that 10-4 would go to her lab at the beginning of days. There was no pattern to these visits he could decipher, but they always seemed to happen when she had calculations outside the facility that were difficult for her. 10-4 never seemed to help directly with these calculations, but Carrie seemed satisfied with his work anyway. Let's say his work and his presence. And his presence anyway. All right. The last time 10-4 saw Carrie, she staggered up the hall with other robots attacking her. She managed to hide from them. As they passed, 10-4 tried to salute where she stood very still in the shadows. She did not wave back. This was the first time ever for that. 10-4 thought this might be one of those times when he didn't have to do that. We didn't have to do this. Okay. All right. The larger bots with their weapons and thundering feet continued up the corridor another way. Screams and cries filled the building. 10-4 performed his little pre-programmed dance. His treads were getting sticky. Carrie lurched and staggered toward him. She must have been coming for his regular maintenance check. But she just leaned against his display glass and smeared it with the red oily stuff. He rolled forward and tried to clean it. Yeah, let's just say it. He tried to clean it, but it was on the outside. All right. Her face was different. There were cuts and burns. One of her eyes appeared damaged. He took an updated image of her for future recognition. Carrie fell out of his sight. He thought out of his range. All right. Why do you keep highlighting everything? Out of his range of sight. There we go. He thought that might be it until morning, but then, let's say his instead of he. His case tilted and partially shattered on the floor. 10-4 assessed old programming to use his arms and treads to right himself again. Then he cleaned the red handprint off the surviving portion of his display case door. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Display case door on the floor. There we go. Carrie laid on her stomach with her face toward him. Her eyes stared in a different sort of way, but he recognized her from the newest image. Let's say the most recent. The most recent image he had on file. All right, very good. As the substance bled out from under her, 10-4 went to work. He scooped and vacuumed as fast as he could, but it kept coming. Soon he filled up and she stopped producing the red stuff. He started to roll back to where his display case had stood, but then he saw the red tracks he left behind. He started cleaning himself and then his tracks. Before he could finish, one of his seams broke and the stuff started to bleed out of him. 10-4 didn't panic. He just swept the liquids back together and revacuumed them. When they bled out again, he cleaned up once more. And so the day continued as Carrie lay still beside him. There were more screams and crashes. More people fell. More of the substance spread on the floor. 10-4 knew it was his job, but he continued to clean up the stuff he had taken from Carrie's spill each time it leaked back out of him. Eventually, the other bots left. The other bots left the building. And no other humans came. Let's say a few faint screams came from outside, but were very distant. Okay. A few faint screams came from outside, but were very distant. 10-4 went on cleaning the same spill over and over. As time passed, the substance bled out of him slower until it finally coagulated in his tanks in one heavy knot. Okay, so I'm going to put a K at the beginning of knot. He wanted to do his little dance when that job was finally finished, but no one was clapping. He tried to move his treads, but they were locked up under him. But they were, let's say, gummed up and locked under him. He was past his time for maintenance. Looking up, he saw Carrie's face had changed again, the color of her skin, the shape of her unmoving eyes, the blackness around her wounds. He decided to take one more picture so he would not forget who she was. As he felt his system shutting down inside him, he lifted his arm and his vac one more time in salute to his friend. She had not waved, but he thought it would be okay. Scanning past her, he spied many more puddles. Most had hardened on their own, much like Carrie's spill, now safe inside him. This was one of those times that it wasn't his job anymore. Let's say he decided. This was one of those times that it wasn't his job anymore. Things started to go black. He was not particularly concerned. Like Carrie had said, he didn't have to. As Carrie had said, he didn't necessarily have to, let's say. Have to do anything. Like Carrie had said, he didn't necessarily have to do anything. Dark, darker, black.